Hi, I'm Stacy, and I'm riding a bit of an emotional roller coaster. First of all, I'm really excited because I finished my random rail fence quilt top. It's just a little wall hanging, and the tutorial for how to construct it is on my channel. See the description below. But I'm also a little nervous because I'm about to break some rules. Now, quilting has some rules and they're fairly flexible, but I think I'm going to go a little overboard, and I'm a bit nervous about it, but also feeling kind of devious. So you can see I'm all over the place, but mostly I'm excited. So let me tell you what I'm planning to do. I've not been quilting in a long time, and when I used to make a lot more quilts more frequently, I would machine quilt them on a long arm machine. This is too small to clean off my long arm machine and start it up after probably 10 years of sitting idle. And I'm not really all that great at quilting on a home machine, in part because I don't want to do just straight lines on this quilt, which I could work my way through. And I'm not all that great at free motion. So doing free motion quilting would be a skill that I could work on and get better at, and that would be great. Except I've got a list of other skills that I want to work on well before that one. One of the things I'm currently playing around with is slow stitching. And I thought this would be the perfect project to play with some slow stitching. Now, that in and of itself isn't really that big of a rule breakage, but how I'm going to layer my quilt just may be. I have decided that I am going to baste in some scraps of cotton batting onto the back of my quilt top. And I'm going to baste those in place with an invisible basting stitch, which I'll show you in a moment. Then I'm going to go ahead and do a full piece of batting and put my backing on and continue my slow stitching. This is going to create a few areas on the quilt that are a little bit thicker than some others. And I think that's going to work really great for this quilt. So let's get started. All right, to start with, I laid out where I wanted the pieces to be. I actually did that on the right side of the quilt, and then I moved them to the back and pinned them in place. So I'm going to start with this small piece right here. And I'm using just regular sewing thread. This is cotton sewing thread. And I picked green. This may be too bright of a green. You're not really going to see this, hopefully, this stitch much on the front. I also happen to have a bobbin of a more, well, a less saturated green, and I think this is going to be the one to use. So I'm going to cut a length of thread for this. The real question is, can I thread my needle without my needle threader? Yes. Since the back is already exposed, I'm just going to make a little knot. I don't have to worry about burying this knot since it's on an area that I can easily get to. The concept of the invisible basting stitch is that you have a very tiny stitch on the front of the piece and larger stitches on the back. And it holds things together, but you do not have to take it out because you really can't see the stitch that's on top. So I'm just going to go ahead and start right up here in a little corner. And on the front side of the work, I am just taking the smallest of back stitches before hopping well over to the next spot to stitch. And there you can see it's just a tiny, tiny little bit of a stitch. And because I'll be doing slow stitching all over the top of the quilt later, you really won't notice any of these at all. Let's take a look at what it looks like on the back. And there you can see large running stitches on the back. So I've got my work cut out for me. I'm going to sit back, watch a few videos, and baste away. Let me catch you up on the stitching progress of the quilt. I wanted to use this cotton batting because it's lovely to stitch through, and I bought the roll that was perfect for doing table runners and pot holders and other small projects. And of course it's too small for one piece to work on this quilt, but that's okay. Let me show you what I did. It's hard to see on the front side, so let me flip it to the back here. I already began stitching doing the spiral circles. I'm starting with a large one. This will be the medium one. There'll be a small one that goes here. And what I did was I took a length of the batting, and it's probably about this wide, and I cut a curve along the inner edge. I then cut another piece, and I cut another curve, but not one that matched the original curve. I wanted them to overlap. So I am stitching where they meet on both edges. And then I had the bits left over that I had cut off. And so I am stitching those down as well, which will just give some extra into some of the parts. So once I get this stitched and the smaller spiral stitched in, and then this piece down as well, then I'm going to go ahead and put the backing on and then finish all the stitching. Now I am stitching with 3 strands of embroidery floss, and I am using the Baldani. It is hand dyed, color fast, and it is a dream to work with. I love it. So this was the Vintage Hues sampler. And I believe each of these is, I think, 25 yards, each little ball. So I am using colorway P2. It's lovely. It goes very well with this. I will be using some of the other colorways. I'm using just this one to start with in all the, before the backing goes on. And then I will be using probably this gold and perhaps the brown. There's another green that I may use as well. I may use this, which is neutrals, and possibly kind of these rosy pinks. It may pick up. We'll see. We'll see. It definitely needs a little bit of that pink or red. I may have to go to just regular DMC embroidery floss for that, and that's fine. If I feel I need something darker, there is this almost black. Again, it's hand dyed, so it's different colors, but I think this will be dark enough. I could even use this orange color as well. So I'm excited. Lots of slow stitching for this quilt. And I'll be going back over these spirals, adding some additional stitches in there. They're just to, again, tack down the batting so that that is all in place. And then, well, we're just going to keep stitching on. So I'm going to show you how I draw a circle or mark a circle onto the quilt top so that then I can stitch the circle and spiral in that. And I think you can probably see here is the large circle, and the medium one is over here, and I'm going to put a small one right here. So I checked all of my water soluble and heat soluble markers, which I hadn't used in years, and none of them worked. So this was the alternative that I came up with, because I didn't really want to mark with regular pencil on the quilt top. I'm going to pin around the base of this little cup here. So I'm just sticking a pin in, and I found that if I mark one side and then I come over and I mark the other, it's a good starting point. And I will mark back here. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just to give me some indication. There we go. All right, so now I have a square, but I can easily round that out by adding some pins in between. And it just gives me a good indication. And I feel pretty confident that I can stitch a circle with these little guidelines. And once I put these second set of pins in, I'll just double check how well I did. Oh, pretty good. A little close on those, but that's all right. Move those out just a little. All right, that's a good enough indication. And I'm going to go ahead and hoop this area. I found it was easier to do that when I was doing these. I didn't do an invisible base for the larger pieces of batting, although I certainly could have. Instead, I marked out the circle, hooped it, stitched that, and then smoothed things out and stitched the rest of the pieces in place. And again, I'm just going to show you the back so you can see where I've stitched the circle, I've stitched the two pieces, and again, they overlap. They're not butted up against each other. They're overlapping. And then I added these additional pieces cut off from these little curvy bits onto there. I don't have one on this side, and I might be okay with that. I might come back. We'll see. I'm going to add this. You can see the back of the pins here for the circle. Looks fairly circular there. I may add in, this is the other piece. We'll see. And maybe I'll make that more of a curve. It kind of does fit in there pretty nicely, but we'll see. We'll see. There's already a lot going on. Let's stitch that circle. So using the pins as a guide, I'm just going to stitch around in a circle and then spiral towards the center. Part of the charm of slow stitching is that it has a bit of a rustic feel to it. So perfection doesn't even come into play. And now I'm coming back around to where I started, and as I get there, I'm going to start spiraling inward. For all my spirals, I come close and I get a little further away. Just kind of gives it a little bit more character. There's the back. And there is the front. I thought I had filmed how I put the backing on, and apparently I didn't. Let me just fill you in with what I did. I cut a piece of backing fabric that was about 2 inches wider on each side. So 4 inches, at least 4 inches larger than the width and the height of the quilt top. And I've already started stitching. I'm stitching in the center and working my way out. I did press, believe it or not, the backing before I attached it. And now that I have that center, I had put some pins in, and you can see that side's actually not too bad. There's no pins there, but here where I've pinned, they need to move. So I'm just going to go ahead and repin that all the way around, and that will keep it pretty good. I'm working on the center, and I'm going to be working this way and then this way, which will attach all of it here. And then from there, I will be working my way outward towards the corners. So I'm not terribly concerned with the wrinkles that are currently here because they won't be there by the time I get stitching in that area. So I've changed colors of thread. I am now using a golden toned hand-dyed thread, and I am going back and forth with a running stitch in between those curvy lines that I did resulting from the cuts that I made on the batting. And I'm going to do that all the way down to this edge and all the way to that edge. Now, since this video is getting to be quite lengthy, I'll just follow up when I have more of the quilt top done.